biggest camera store in the country, and 47th Street Photo is still in business, and a whole bunch of other companies. I got a cold call one day from somebody that wanted to know if I wanted to be president of if I knew anybody that wanted to be president of a small camera company. I thought it was my brother-in-law Russell. Said, Russell, kiss my tush, I'll see you at Ma's for dinner tonight. And as I'm hanging up the phone, I hear this voice yelling. Well, the job was president of Hasselblad in the U.S. So I really look at my role in terms of coming into the photo industry, not 17 years earlier when I was washing bottles in the lab at Polaroid, but when I started at Hasselblad in '87. And that was an amazing stretch, and everybody here is old enough to remember what the industry was like, because it was so strong. And that's when Monty was alive. The first book I ever did together was with Don Blair, and it was called Body Parts. And it was all about posing and lighting, everything from people with long necks, glasses, kids with braces. What do you do when you've got a 6'6" groom and a 4'2" bride? What do you do when the bride isn't size 5? And all I remember is telling my dad, go look at the website. And instead of, I think it was bodypartsbydonblair.com, he put in bodyparts.com, and the next thing you know, he's telling me that my mother caught him looking at dirty pictures. He got Pamela Anderson naked, and she took away his computer. So that's part of my history. I was with Hasselblad for 12 and a half years, left at 99 to go play on the internet, 2.5 years. It felt like 7 to 1 in a dog's life, so it really felt like 15. Went from there when the internet imploded in 2001, 2002, took over as president of Rangefinder Publishing and WPPI. That was a great 7 years until I got fed up with the owner of the company, who at the time, we just didn't agree on a whole bunch of things. Left on my own in 2009, and that was when I incorporated my own company, which is primarily consulting. And let's see, in 4 years ago, Larry Tiffenbrun, who is the founder of Platypod, said, I want you to be my CEO. I said, come on, it's a mom and pop company. You don't need a CEO. And I've done it already, and I don't want to give up all these other things I do. I still have major clients with Tamron, with Marathon Press. Panasonic Lumix comes and goes depending on what's going on in the world. A couple of other smaller companies there that I'm working with. But I took over to help him, and next thing you know, he gave me the title of CMO, which my last day as CMO is Friday of this week. After 4 years, I just said to Larry, I want to step down because it's almost a full-time job, and I want to get back to the things I love doing. I've done 6 books with other authors. Joe Busick and I did one together. Don Blair and I did one I mentioned. Scott Warren and I did one called Going Pro. Bambi Cantrell and I did 3 on the wedding world. And I want to get back to what I love to do the most, which is mostly writing. But I said to Vinny, what do you want? Because my normal programs, when I teach a workshop, it's normally about business and marketing. And that's where that's what I love the most. So I spend most of my life trying to teach, especially younger photographers, that the basics are still in play. You still got to have a firm handshake. All the things that most of us probably grew up with, hearing from our parents and grandparents, it's just common sense. So I don't care how clever you want to get on social media and SEO, you still need to be able to do business, you still need to have quality, you still need to be able to close the sale, and you need to listen to the consumer. My favorite line is, you got 2 ears and 1 mouth, listen twice as much as you talk. So Vinny said, well, this isn't a group you really want to do the marketing with, but how about photos? Am I covering it good so far? So what I did was Platypod. How many of you even know what Platypod is? Oh, yay. Well, I have a new Platypod Extreme for you to give as a door prize tonight, but you have to figure out who it goes to.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I went through a whole series of presentations, and just wanted to pick out some of the best images and also some players who you may not know about. Anybody know who Don Komarechka is? All right, we got one. He is the finest macro photographer, I think, in the world. His book is the finest resource. Whether you shoot macro and close-up or not, everybody should have that book on their bookshelf. It's about yay thick, it is stunning, and it's more like, it's a combination of a tabletop book and a coffee table book and a full textbook. So in any event, Platypod is essentially meant to be a sidekick to your tripod. It's not meant to replace the tripod, but you're going to see a lot of opportunities where people are using them, and it's just different from what they would normally. The results are different. We've got two ball heads. On the left there, the extreme in the middle is your basic Platypod, that's your base, and then you've got a whole bunch of accessories, including that handle there I'll show you, we'll talk about in a minute. Everything I'm going to show you now are photographers, their images, and you'll see the BTS of how the shot was set up. This is Lizzie Gadd. Lizzie Gadd is out in Western Canada somewhere, and she's become absolutely the #1 selfie photographer. She sets her camera on auto, has it shooting just, I don't know what her timing is. I'm guessing that she sets it up probably about another frame every 5 seconds, and then she jumps into the picture herself. And then she does a fine art sale every year. This one coming up, this is one of my favorites of hers. And she'll do a fine art sale, and this is very cool in the way she markets it. She's got her database, she's got her followers, because she's built it up in social media, and then she'll do a once-a-year sale where if there's anything you want to buy, it's 50% off in the first 48 hours, and then it goes to regular pricing. And I think she's using a lab out of Germany. But the work is just stunning, and it's her camera on a Platypod, positioned at wherever she wants it. She's got a great shot that we actually bought and have in our dining room at home, where she's on a piece of giant pile of driftwood that must be 15 feet high, and it's out in the shallow end of the lake. And her only problem was that she'd go out to the lake and then wait till all the ripples stop, so it's just like glass. And then she brought her dog with her, and the dog would come scampering out. She had to climb down over the whole thing, tie the dog up, and go back out, and the dog would get loose and come back out again. So that's Lizzie. Now, Lizzie's boyfriend is Chris Andrus, who is absolutely extreme shooting. He likes the colder it is, the higher altitude it is. He does a couple of workshops in Mongolia every year. And normally, I mean, Chris was here at our house. They were both here, I guess it was 2 years ago. And I was laughing because he wasn't used to, we're in Osprey, we're at 9.5 feet above sea level. And he's used to being in thin air at, 8,000 feet. It's like, Chris, you gonna be all right? You might have to go stand on the roof. But again, it's looking for something different and something creative. Oh, how many of you know Bob Coates? Nobody knows Bob Coates. All right, Bob Coates, very active in PPA. He's been a judge for years. He's one of their instructors. Bob is one of our ambassadors. And in fact, I just did a blog post this morning on his night sky workshops in Sedona. If you're looking for one of those experiences of a lifetime, he's got 3 or 4 workshops he's doing this summer in Sedona. And Sedona is so magnificent because you're not picking up any, what buzzword I want?
Ambient.
You're not picking up the city ambient lights. That's his setup. That's our ball head. That's the Platyball Elite. That little light in the middle there is just a level indicator. It's not a leveler. It's just an indicator to let you know. So if you're working in the dark, it just becomes so sweet to be able to use. This is one of Bob's, one of my favorites. I called him this morning. He was guessing that was about a 30-minute exposure. And again, that's Sedona. And then, I mean, I'm not sure there's anything that Bob can't shoot. That's his setup. In this case, he's using, there it is. Oh, you can't see the drop. Nope, it won't come out of there. He was using the new handle, which is really, it's a tripod extension. It goes from 6 inches to 10.5 inches. It's got a section at the top that'll take goosenecks, so you really can design an octopus of gear. He's got from lighting, he's using LumaCube, to clamps with reflectors. I've got one coming up at Don Komarechka's in a minute. There it is, right there. Now Don is the mad scientist of photography. You tell Don that something can't be done, and he's going to show you how it can be done. And he is just bombarding this flower, shooting infrared, and the results. And that's Don. I've got one of his images to show you after we're done here. He's got an ant walking on a blade of grass that is one of the most stunning images that I've ever seen in macro.
He's got an ultraviolet shot of a dragonfly that is outstanding.
Yeah. So if anybody, all Don has to do is have somebody say to him, no, you can't do that. Oh, yes, he can. Now, to give you an idea of why I also think this is the mad of the mad scientist, he helped us launch Plataball on the grid with Scott Kelby going back. This was just before the pandemic. At that time, he lives in Bulgaria now. He lived just south of Toronto. He had just gotten a new Tesla. Said to his wife, I want to take it for a drive. Went from there down to our house in Osprey. Stayed overnight at our house. We went up to Kelby's in Clearwater to do the show the next day. Had dinner on the way back. The next morning, he left and drove back to Toronto. I said to him, you're nuts. Who does that? He said, you don't understand. He said, my wife is busy. We've got a baby at home. And I had 2 days, both ways, in the car where I could just think and just lay out what projects I wanted to do. He's got one of his images coming out soon on a U.S. stamp. He's got one of his snowflake images on one of the Canadian coins. But he is remarkable. So if you want to look at some incredible work, go to his website. I think it's just DonKomarechka.com. This is Shamira Young. Now, I put this here because Shamira is combining still images with watercolor, playing around, manipulating the image. But what's cool is she now has, 90-some prints on business cards, on holiday cards, greeting cards, that somebody is repping for. She's got 80-some or 70-some images in Walmart. Property Brothers picked up 2 of her images for their home decorating site, which is a lot like the stuff I haven't been in there in years, but like Pottery Barn would carry pre-framed prints. So it's become a very lucrative. It started out as a side hustle. She really is more of a portrait headshot business photographer, and worked with a couple of different hospitals around the Detroit area. But it's become a very lucrative business, and it's just a matter of finding the right product, getting somebody to listen to you. And now she's got all these cards that are all available online. This is Chris Blair, who does a lot of production for us. This is one of the things I love about the new handle. What you can't see right there is under the water. Here's the top. Here's the top of the platypod. It's reflecting on the water right here. Now you would never get that shot. I mean, you could with a long lens and be in the right position, but Chris wanted to put it right in the water and be right on top of them with that perspective. And because there's nothing you can damage on the platypod, and there's nothing you can damage on the handle, so It's right there, planted in the water. His camera would have been on top. Rick Friedman is out of the Boston area, using the handle, in this case, with his Profoto lights. Skip Dickstein. He is one of the lead photographers for the Derby. And I don't know which, I think this was last year, not this past one. No, I'm sorry, this was this past one. And it wasn't the Derby. Anybody know race? It's the race before. No, it's not the previous. It was at the Derby, but it's the next race
Belmont?
right after the. No,
Belmont?
Belmont is another location. It's at the Derby, but it's whatever they call whatever the next race is, and I don't remember what the name of it was. But again, at the finish line, and he's able to fire it remotely and get the shots as they come across the finish line. This I would just throw in here for the fun of it. Dave Williams is one of our ambassadors. He's in the UK. Everybody kept telling us that the handle looks like the handle of a lightsaber. So that was the shot. I don't know, what is it about? About guys and their toys? Yeah. We used to say that the old line was, "He who dies with the most toys wins." Any of you know Duncan McNabb, or did you know Duncan? Because Duncan had more toys than anybody. Jesse Fireeisen, who is a Photoshop guru. He does a lot of stuff with toys. There's a good example of one of his setups. So he's using two different platypods, one on the left, a small flat ultra. Actually, they're both ultras, and that's an ultra on the other side, and then he's got the ball head on it, scaling it up, and then using the goosenecks, in this case, along with a clamp, to be able to take the shot, and then pulling just a couple of pieces out in Photoshop. That's another one. In fact, he won, I think I had one. Did I have one more? Yeah, there it is. He won, that was the year he won the Guru Award. And you look at these things, and sometimes it's hard to believe that he's not on a soundstage in Hollywood. Shiv Verma, who is, actually, he's much more than a platypod ambassador. He's been a good friend of Larry's for years. I've known Shiv for years. I don't think there's anything that Shiv can or doesn't shoot. He's a Lumix ambassador as well for Panasonic. Again, using the handle of the setup. This is another fun thing with the handle. Lenworth is shooting straight down. Now, I had to shoot a book cover for Sarah Francis recently, and normally I'll shoot it with my phone, or I'll shoot it with, I have a G9 that I use a lot from Lumix, and I'll shoot it, and then I'll try and get it level, because I don't want to take the time to set up a copy stand. Well, it took me 2 minutes to do that same setup that Lenworth is doing, and just extend it out off the top of the ball head, right over a coffee table that I've got in my office, and just shoot straight down, and within a couple of minutes I've got the setup, and then I've got the shot, and I'm not screwing around well, in this case I use Luminar a lot to try and straighten out the edges. It's also ideal for vlogging. That is Dave Williams. And he's got it set up he's got the handle set up with everything, because it's a great product for vloggers.
It's like a prototype of early Star Trek film.
Yeah. And then, I mean, same thing again. Now this is Chris Blair's work, and he's out in the snow. So the same way we had him shooting on the waves as they were coming in, or really low surf. He's doing the same thing in the snow. Samantha Kennedy, that's the Angel Oak in Savannah. And what we loved about this, the fun about platypod, is that the tripod police aren't going to get you. And like it says right there, no tripods, but nobody views a platypod as a tripod, including Scott Kelby, who loves to photograph cathedral ceilings. And he's got some beautiful work. And there he is. He's right there. He's got the camera on the floor, and nobody in security is bothering him or even cares, for that matter. Now, somebody here knows Vanelli, right?
Oh, yeah.
Nobody knows Vanelli?
Yeah.
All right. Vanelli is a knucklehead, and I use that as a tremendous compliment. The only thing bigger than Vanelli is his heart. This was in Scotland, and he had the platypod with him and just wanted to get that kind of angle. And then he's tweaked in the sky a little bit because he's also a spokesperson for Skylum and Luminar. Skip Cohen. I had to throw my own in.
The Maven.
The Maven. I do not make a living as a photographer, but I know more than I let on, having hung out with so many of you guys and guys like Carmen. I mean, the difference is between me and Carmen is that he could light a gorgeous portrait in 10 minutes. I could get the same beautiful image, but it would take me 10 hours or maybe 10 days. But that's not where I make where my career has come in, is focusing on teaching business and marketing, and that's what I love the most. So on all those books that I did, the marketing sections were always mine. But we had a monarch butterfly and a chrysalis, and that's what the setup was. Couple lights. One thing I learned early on, which most of you probably know, I was trying to do it in video, and I was as close as I could go with a 30 millimeter Lumix macro lens. And at that point, if I paid attention to my aperture, it might have made more sense. But that butterfly would move a 32nd of an inch and it would be out of focus. I mean, and I was trying to shoot video. I've since learned better ways to do it. But again, platypod lets you go into places that tripods might not go. It's another one of Samantha's in terms of just sunset and how she's using it and set up. Dave Williams, who had that vlogging set up, he's got it strapped to a railing. And then he dragged the shutter a little bit as the train was coming out of the tunnel. And you wind up with a pretty spectacular shot. Brian David Casey, otherwise known as 3 Buffet Brian, he attended a workshop. We used to do a thing called Skip Summer School in Vegas. He's the only person I know that did all 3 buffets each day we were in Vegas for the workshop. Nobody can do that. And he's like 6'3" and 0 body fat. And it's just wrong. Not to mention the fact that he should have had heartburn. I mean, he should have died that week. You can't consume that. And this is at a college he's up around Portland, Seattle, somewhere up in the Pacific Northwest. You know Rick Salmon?
Yeah.
You know the name. This is Rick's wife, Susan. And she's just playing around with her phone. I can't think of the name of the dam. This is in New Jersey. There we go. Now, I'm only putting this up here because
Is it before and after?
it's before, well, it is. It's way before. So I was using Throwback Thursday is one of the greatest marketing tools for a portrait family photographer, because it's the way you can remind mom that the kids are growing up and life is changing and your kids are never going to be the same again. Tomorrow's a new day. So using Throwback Thursday, it's a great way to remind mom, who's the target audience 98% of the time if you're in the portrait wedding business, and you want to remind mom that it's time to get an updated portrait. So every Thursday, I post a Throwback Thursday post on the skipcohenuniversity.com blog. I do it because I have fun with all of you guys. You guys are my readership. I'm not after mom. But I always remind everybody, if you haven't gone searching for your own throwbacks, use your throwbacks to remind mom of how much life changes. Also, throwbacks remind me how much I love this industry. I'm at, let's see, in February, it was 53 years since I started at Polaroid. And my setup was nothing more than the phone on a Platypod Ultra with a little bedroll ball head. Russell Brown. I think it's Russell Peter Brown? Russell Thomas Brown. Russell Brown is the leading evangelist. How many of you heard Julianne Koss speak before? He's one step above Julianne. So he is the leading evangelist at Adobe. In this case, he's up in Norway. In fact, he's with, I forgot this was set up this way. God, this is pretty, I didn't even know it was going to do that on me. And Dave Williams, that is Russell Brown there, and Dave Williams said, God, I gotta get a shot of you. So there's his setup. Again, he's shooting on his phone. And phones right now. Sheila and I went down to Key West. By the way, this is my wife Sheila, who puts up with me. And she's only here tonight because she can lip sync every other program I've ever done. She said, I want to know if you can talk about something different. The quality, we went down to Key West for a week. It's the first time that I've ever gone anywhere. I didn't take a camera with me. I just took my phone. I had the new iPhone with the 14. And the quality is unbelievable. But it still takes a photographer to know what to do with that image when you're done. So it doesn't matter what you shot it with, but now what are you going to do with it, and how are you going to make it look as beautiful as you can. Riley Arthur has a book out on cell phone photography. She just wanted to get a shot of a blood orange, and that's just set up with her phone. Hilmar Smith is over in Orlando. Hilmar does some very cool things. Now, this is another one of those things you could never do with most other, well, you sure could do with a full-size tripod, but platypod inside the refrigerator, photographing out at her. She's also got one where she put it in the oven and has it looking out. Then she's got one of her daughter would have been about 9 years old. She's shooting her daughter through the portrait of her daughter, through the teeth on the other side. You could jury rig a setup that you could make it work. We get excited about it because the platypod becomes such a logical piece of gear for that. Rick Salmon, otherwise known as Susan Salmon's other half. Everybody else would shoot that probably from here, looking at her on the loom. Rick was in, this is I think Mongolia. In fact, he and Scott Kelby were together on this trip. And he put it down on the floor and shot up through the loom, which becomes a pretty cool way to be able to get a shot that is so different from what most people would normally photograph. Charles and Jennifer Maring do a lot of vlogging. So the camera goes on the platypod. It's got a silicone pad to keep it from slipping off your dash, and they'll do a lot of their regular vlog will come out with them talking about something they're doing in lifestyle. They're both Lumix ambassadors. They're both phenomenal photographers. And in fact, at WPPI one year, a bunch of us went out to dinner, and we had like 6 or 8 of the major wedding photographers. Clay Blackmore was there, Jared Gionis was there, can't remember who else. Charles and Jennifer were there, and I said, all right guys, give me your horror stories from weddings. What's the worst thing you ever had happen? Their story was they were shooting a wedding, and the mother of the grandmother had a heart attack, and the EMTs came, and she did not die, but they took care of her, and she went off, and the wedding continued. And then the same EMTs came back when the limo driver backed into the mother of the bride, and she broke her arm. Oh my God. And we're like, well, I'm sitting like, what do you do? Like, how do you recover from that? And I'm betting that, how many of you ever shot a wedding? You got to have a couple horror stories. Tony Corbell. Now, somebody's got to know Tony Corbell.